Welcome to the Brute Facts Podcast with your host and everybody's favorite Christian, Eddie Kroom. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for future content.
Welcome to Brute Facts. As usual, thanks Pasta Mike with Normalizing Atheism for that awesome intro. Tonight, I've got a more of a laid-back fun one. It's a friend of mine, Jim Benton, and he runs Meaning Forge. It's another show on YouTube. It's a pretty cool show. It's different style than what I'm used to because I'm a philosophy of religion kind of guy, and he has a mind that works much different than mine. But I enjoy it because it gives me a different perspective on things. And there's a lot of times we just kind of shoot the crap and hang out, and I just pick his brain for stuff. Also, if you didn't get the big announcement from the last show, we have Richard Carrier confirmed June 3rd at 7 p.m. Central. I've got a couple of other big-time guests that I've announced on Normalizing Atheism, Pasta Mike show. I'm going to hold off announcing them here until I get dates confirmed, but I think it's dates people that you're absolutely going to love. So I've got Jim back there waiting on me, so I'm going to quit talking and bring him on. How's it going, Jim?
It's going, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely, man. So how you been?
I've been good. I was chilling backstage, and now I have to go to work.
This is where the fun starts, homie. So, man, it's been all of 10 minutes since I talked to you. So yeah, it's been a while. But
I'm trying out this courage and conviction whiskey. It's not bourbon, but we'll see how it tastes.
Oh, so you went full whiskey on me. You just said, to heck with the bourbon. I'm going just full whiskey.
Brother, I've been drinking a lot of bourbon lately.
You can't go wrong. It's like I tell everybody, one of the best arguments for God is bourbon. You know, if bourbon exists, God exists. Bourbon exists, therefore God exists. You can't deny that.
That's a brute fact, right?
That is a brute fact. Look at you. Oh, we got a few people already in the audience. This is going to be a little off key tonight since it's going to be real free flowing. Jim and I are friends. We hang out. We mess with each other a lot. So this is going to be like just people hanging out and listening to us a little bit cleaner than what we probably normally are. So tell us about yourself, Jim. You are a Christian. Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm a Christian.
Should I say that he's a huge Jordan Peterson fan? So we may see a lot of deflecting and pontificating, but
actually, it's more like everyone needs to go on a diet. So the number one advice that I'd give you is go eat a salad.
Go eat a salad. Oh, well, you can't be Jordan Peterson then because he's on a carnivore diet. Nothing but meat.
But he says everything's a word salad. That seems to be a very common critique, and it is a common critique. So, like, word salad, you want to go on a diet, go eat some salad.
Yeah. You know, I like, he was one of those guys that I resisted for a long time. You and I had this conversation, and it's actually because of you and Mark Slump that is in the chat going on and on about it. And because I always said, either he's like on a whole other level of intelligence and I don't understand him, or he is one of the greatest sophists ever. And I kind of leaned toward it being a little sophistry until I really gave it some time, listened to his talks with Sam Harris, ended up watching all 4 of the public talks they had. I won't call it a debate. And I was thoroughly impressed. He is a smart guy. So,
Well, we were talking like narratives and stuff like that. It is going to be a little word salad-y and not as clean as science per se. Like science, 1 + 1 = 2, right? That's typically the way. And I know it's math, but like that's kind of how.
Yeah, no, you're totally going to mess this whole thing up if you start bringing math in it tonight.
Oh wait, I thought math could prove God.
Yeah, that's kind of what Mark's been working on there. In fact, we're in a lot of Discord servers together, and I'm not even allowed to talk in them anymore because Mark will private message me and say, can you hold off? Can you not go on a rant? I'm trying to talk to him. And then here comes the math thing. And I'm like, sure thing, boss.
There you go. There's some humble pie for you.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a smart kid too. So I like hearing him talk about it. He's good at talking and fleshing things out like that.
Yeah.
So were you born a Christian?
I guess so. I mean, I was born into a Christian household, into a Christian family. And I went to church occasionally. I went to a Baptist church. I went to a Methodist church, and I went to a Catholic high school. I've gotten into arguments, I think, with everyone in all of those churches. So I'm definitely human. And I was baptized in a Baptist church. I was confirmed in a Methodist church, and I pissed off my theology teacher in my Catholic high school. So we're all good.
Hey, you've done something when well, I don't know. I think a lot of the stories that I've heard in Catholic schools are that's not hard to do. So it's
it wasn't.
No, I asked it like that because all of our friendly atheists in here, we're born atheists. So I just kind of want to throw a little jab at them. They know I love them though. So would you say, now I've heard you talk, I'll let you talk about it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you're more of a pragmatic type of Christian. Would you put that label on it?
Well, I guess, what do you mean by pragmatic?
Not necessarily just because it works, but the benefits or, well, maybe that's not the right thing to say. It's just, the talks that we've had and stuff, either you're really, really private about it or I don't know. I'll let you put it in your words.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm pragmatic as far as like it's I'm hedging my bets or stuff like that. I don't think that necessarily works very well. I think that it's just kind of dumb. As far as like, I guess how would I describe myself is rather difficult because I'm trying to find, in some cases, like the most and that's, I guess, is where we would say pragmatist version of it is like the most useful form of Christianity, or like what is really kind of boils down to what is religion,
right?
In some regards, right? And how that is a mechanism for individuation or like becoming an individual, outside of like actually for us to move through the world effectively.
Yeah, I would. Well, let me kind of clarify. I lost your sound.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Let me clarify because I see, Jordan Peterson is kind of a pragmatic Christian, so that's why I was leaning towards that. And I knew you were heavily influenced by him, so I didn't know if that was kind of, because you and I have talked a lot about it, but of course, I'm a blabbermouth and open book and talk about everything, and you're more of a kind of kept to yourself kind of guy. So I wasn't sure if it was like a real personal thing with you, or you were kind of just a more pragmatic kind. Not that you didn't believe, but because I would say, given the pragmatic approach, I I think it's pretty valid. I don't think there's really anything, like the Jordan Petersons, and there's several others that, a couple other psychology people that
Mhm.
are pragmatic theists, because, it's like Jordan Peterson says, we're so heavily influenced in our society by it. And, so we kind of hold those values based on, being so heavily influenced by it. And of course, he goes to great lengths to, explain a lot of the benefits that come from that. So, being a Christian, growing up, and I know you served in the military. Was that ever anything that caused issues when you were in the military? Because I know I've got a lot of family in the military, a lot of friends, and very few of them are religious, or if they are not open about it at all. So,
Well, I mean, religion in and of itself can be very personal, and I think that's fair, to a point. Um, I guess where I would say my military journey and my faith in it was rather, I mean, it was there. I was lucky enough, I guess, and lucky and maybe even unfortunate in some regards, not to actually experience some of the things my brothers and sisters in arms have actually experienced. I actually never deployed, because, well, I was in Europe and then Russia kicked off, and so like I had to respond to that. I was part of that response. And then I came to the 2nd Airborne, and then I missed the deployment because deployments are changing. So I never really got to really see that side of it, the darkest, the dark side of humanity in that regard. And as far as faith goes, I would definitely use it and dabble in it. I really didn't get more vigorous in my personal studies than pretty much when that started happening was when I was being exposed to Jordan Peterson. I'd wake up and I'd start pretty much I'd spend the first hour of my morning watching a video or something like that, trying to get through that, like pretty much exercise my brain and then exercise my body, because you have to do PT in the Army at 6:30 in the morning so I'd wake up before that so that way I could watch the episode or something like that, then commute to work, start working out at 6:30 in the morning. And then of course, like I needed people to talk to kind of flesh these ideas out. And so I'd go to my chaplain and I'd talk with my chaplains on the topic. And I would attend a few field services as well.
I bet you really miss those early morning workouts, don't you?
I don't mind the early morning workouts. The issue is I didn't like the commute. I didn't like the idea of I couldn't manage my own day per se. And I just had a better way. So I'd wake up, work out, and do whatever the hell I wanted and then go to work. That to me makes more sense. So,
and somehow you found a woman that wanted to marry you. So how long have you been married?
We've been married since 2019, okay. November. So we got in right before COVID, pretty much right before it.
Oh wow!
Yeah. It was the last of the public ceremonies, and
COVID's been going on that long.
It has. But we were college sweethearts, I guess, because we met.
Oh, how sweet!
End of my junior year, which is like 2010.
Yeah.
No, 2012.
2012. You better get them dates right, or hope she's not watching.
She's not feeling too hot right now because we got a baby on the way, so she's juggling.
Yeah. A little Jim. That's going to be interesting. We're gonna watch. We're gonna bring Jim on. We're gonna he'll be on probably a couple of times at least, but we're gonna mark this date and then we're going to come back in a year, and we're going to see how much Jim has changed in a year.
Hopefully, all good things. All good things.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, excuse me, you absolutely change. And when you have one, and then she says, I'm pregnant again, later on, it's like that thing. It's like the same feeling all over again. And it's like, how am I going to do it too? We already have one. And then you have, about the third time, it's like, whatever. Okay, let's do this. So,
I'm
but they all
pretty good with the stressors and adding on things. I'm really pretty good with that. That doesn't bother me. I'm pretty much already the dad who has like 2 kids, but I'm on my first one. It's like, oh, it's okay. He won't die. I promise.
So the real question is, how much weight have you gained so far?
Oh yeah, that's a problem. That's a major problem. So I used to weigh 220 last year,
son.
and now I weigh 240. And I got a good little gut going. So like I'm really working the dad bod thing right now. I work out sometimes, but not all the time. So I tried to run like a few months ago, and it did not end very well for me. And like normally I could run like 6 miles in a single go, and I'm like dying on like mile and a half.
Yeah, I gained about 20 pounds with each kid. Now I lost it, but then gained it, and then lost it, and then gained. Because she stayed. I mean, she literally gained the baby weight. So and then it's like coming home to this vicious lion sometimes. So you got to show up with steak, except the steak was donuts. And so she would get about 1 down, sometimes none. And I'm in there with the box, like, just kind of, I was comfort eating, it's like, cause I could have died at any day, it was, oh man, I'm telling you, I love you, Amber. But those were some tough times, man. You see the worst in women during those times, and I don't blame them. I would hate me too,
It's good though. It's good. So we'll see how it all pans out. The good news is I'm super aware of my mortality now, so that's super helpful.
You realize how fragile life is now.
Yeah. Oh my God, damn it. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about Meaning Forge. You have Meaning Forge, a YouTube program, one I thoroughly enjoy. It is quite a bit different than this one.
I appreciate it.
Topic-wise, guests. And so what gave you the idea to want to do a show with the kind of topics that you have there?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting story, I guess. And it's something that I'm always kind of working out. So I guess I'll just start with the idea is to forge individuals, right? That is the entire idea is how do I forge an individual? Well, that's really hard to do because you in some ways you can't know everything about somebody, but you have to listen to their story. You have to, there's a narrative that's involved. You have to help them develop whys. At the end of the day, they have to bring that to action, and then hopefully they share what they've learned somehow, some way.
So what do you mean by forge? As in molding and creating, or?
Well, so it's kind of two things. One, it is the force of your will coming together in the crucible of life to make yourself, but it's also the forge of your will. Like it's balanced with the idea of what is revealed to you through your life. And so it's very poetic in that regard because you can't do everything all the time. And so especially when you look back on your life, you'll see what's revealed to you. Or even in the process, you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Like something will jump out at you. And that's like, a reveal, a revelation. It's not just limited to Christians who read the Bible, right? It's everybody. And that's what a revelation is. It's this idea.
So I noticed that when you go through the show, you actually have different segments.
Mm-hmm.
each segment, you have your guest explain this particular part of the symbology that you use. So if you don't mind, just kind of briefly how you lay it out. People may be, we may have a lot of people here interested, want to see that. So
I appreciate that.
And the link is in the description also. So make sure you go and subscribe, watch the videos. They're pretty cool. Really, they're really cool. I like the content. I like the people you have. Some of them are so just full of life, and some of them are, just have this I don't know if they were born leaders, but they just have this leadership kind of mantra or aura or something. They're very confident. So, and I found it, and some of them are pretty funny. One of the guys on there, man, he was a great humor. So, kind of just, briefly go through the parts of it, the purpose for them.
Okay. So I like to have a conversation style interview, and I like to at least have some idea of what their story is, their life story, to this point, to whatever point there it is. And then we start going through the symbology of the meaning forge, which is a hammer. It is a hammer, a sword, a pen, and a crown. And we kind of go through this, and the hammer represents what's being brought together, right? It's the forging process. And that's, again, kind of like what's going throughout your life. So you look back on your life, you kind of see what's been made so far to this point. Then we talk about the sword. The sword is the idea. It embodies an action, and it embodies judgment, and it embodies, in many cases, just confidence and empowerment. And how you use that sword is really, really important. And you need that because that's what you've made, right? It's symbolic as to what you've made, and now that's you in the present. Then, along the same vein, a little bit, is the pen, and the pen is about how you share your story. Now that is really interesting because it's not just what you write. For example, it could be how you interact with others, how you write on their hearts, per se, right? To take some Christian-ness into it. And then in that regard, there's a therapeutic process associated with that, because you can talk about journaling, you can talk about all these other things, and you also start to see the cyclical effect of the meaning forge, because now you have the hammer, the sword, the pen, and all of these things are just kind of cyclical. And then you bring yourself to the crown, which is that it's kind of like a binding agent in some regards, because that's where you can stick everything in and it just kind of balances out.
Right.
And that crown represents achievement, self-discipline, and leading others. So there's lots of overlap. It can get a little muddied, but I try to keep it somewhat on track, and it's always a great conversation.
So is this a concept that you kind of developed yourself, or is it, you kind of just, took some philosophies or, some kind of symbolism from here and there for it, or?
Well, I think it's the symbolism that spoke out to me the most. And that's where I talk about what's revealed to you.
Right.
So the hammer, I was reading Norse mythology, and I was reading about the hammer, and I was going why didn't Thor use the hammer to make bridges versus what he used it for, which was a weapon? So he could have made bridges. So are we using the hammer right? And what does the hammer represent? And then, then the sword kind of plays, and that's written really throughout Christian mythology, or the Christian narrative. And it's also intertwined with the pen. It's also, you should probably highlight that one always, Oz. Always.
Oz. That's, if you want a show disruptive with comments, Oz is most definitely one to do it.
It is though allergy season, so I'm going slightly crazy. But that's okay. So
That's really sniffles of fear because his wife's in the other room, sick as a dog while he's in here having fun with
Yeah.
me, and he knows what's going to happen when he's done.
I will be going to the other bedroom because she has the stomach flu. So I will not be going near her.
Far, far away. So
Anyway.
the sword,
So the sword, I noticed a pattern reading through the Bible. And so, yes, I'm a Christian who read the Bible and didn't deconvert.
Really?
So that's pretty amazing in itself. And so I noticed a thread there that there seems to be like the same substance of the logos, the logo with the sword and the pen, and how that's alluded to multiple times in the Bible as both like symbol and how it's used. And so I sat there and you guys are killing me.
Wow.
So I sat there and started asking myself, hang on, well, I'll address those. I'll address those guys. I can't really do that with bourbon or with whiskey, single malt, but it's okay. There was some stuff that really spoke out to me, and I began to think that all three of those, right, in its own little trinity of goodness, were related somehow. So like the sword, you can use a sword much like you use a pen, much like you use words. And they're all interrelated in many different ways. And then also how you empower yourself and how you empower others. And so from there, I was really, my mind was turning often. And I would sit there and I started kind of writing a little bit. And I think this is what I would call the weapons of war, essentially is what these three things represent. In some of my really crappy poetry, and that right there is the key meaning behind the Meaning Forge. And I kept sitting there like I would go on long walks in the morning while I'd try to get back in shape, to no avail. And these symbols would play over and over and over in my head, and I just couldn't get them out. And so I said, I got to do something. I got to put pen to paper, and I've got to figure out what this is. And so I said, well, let's call it the Meaning Forge. I really want to interview people. I really want to learn about their stories. I really want to see how they take on the mantle of responsibility, which is the crown, and that burden, and how they carry themselves through that. And here I am.
That's very interesting, especially the pen and the sword part, because when you were talking about that, there were so many different scriptures running through my mind about how the tongue is a double-edged sword, and you were talking about how we're going to build people up, yet we so many times use it to tear people down. Obviously the writing, how important having scripture written down was for us, how important journaling is something that I've tried to do in the past, and it kind of comes spontaneously. And I wish I was, better disciplined at it, because it is extremely therapeutic. Sometimes I'm kind of, drawn to, express through some type of poetry or something. And I'm not even, doesn't even have to be coherent. Sometimes it's more like kind of poetic ramblings or things that come to mind. And so that is a fantastic the symbology there. I mean, that's,
well, if you think about it, right? And so this was the kind of like the aha moment for me, is I think the crux of the aha moment, and yes, there is some Old Testament references, but I'm not going to get super crazy. So one, we know the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and so like the Word became flesh. So that's John 1. Then we kind of skip over, and let's skip to Galatians and talk about the armor of God. And I always thought to myself, like, the sword, and that's really interesting because it says the sword is the word of the Spirit, or is essentially like, it's the word. So, or the spirit of the word, or something like that, right? So now you have a direct connection right there, and then there's multiple other connections there. So then you hear those who live by the sword die by the sword. There's Revelations has references to an act actually like sword coming out of mouth type of reference. You have like, I guess you can call them biblical figures, how they carry the sword and how that sword has failed them or not failed them.
Right.
And so you have to sit there and really kind of think about those things. And then then you start to get the reference of, well, it writes on the hearts of men. Okay, well, now what is it? Is it a sword or is it a pen? And then how do you do that? And I had to sit there. And then I had to ask the question: are we using these tools the right way? Because clearly, is it an offensive weapon or is it is it a weapon really at all?
Right. That's, in today's day and age, you hear so often that your best defense is a good offense. And we tend to carry that into relationships and people. I don't know if it's, just by default of the nature of who we are, or molding by the society we live in, or, things like that. And it's ironic that it's really totally opposite. It's, we should keep the sword for defending. We should keep the sword.
I would take a moment here and also sit here and so like it's also judgment too, right? So like you sit there and you make a judgment call, and let's just say you're actually judging someone whether or not they're going to go to hell. So imagine yourself standing over some feeble, broken version of yourself, right? And you have a sword to their throat, and then that person's going to say, "What gives you the authority?" Okay, that's a hard stop. That's like a whoa, man. Like, what are we talking about here? So, like, how do I use the sword for someone against someone who's really weak, and then how can I tell if they're weak or strong? And the question becomes, well, then how do you give them revelation or something to that effect? Well, you have to give them that sword, or there's some methodology that is empowering others around you, because you can use that sword as a light, as almost like a light, and you can see that as well, the flaming sword of Eden, right? So there's lots of symbology to a lot of these works, and there's other mythologies, but it's not as, I guess I'm just not as emotionally attached to them as Christianity.
Right. And so for my fundamentalist friends in the back, I love you. I really love you, but it's symbology. There's a lot of imagery. There's nothing wrong with that, because poetry, it doesn't follow that if it's some type of poetry or some type of literary device, that it's not meant to convey a message, and that the message is any different than if someone was going to take it, at extreme face value. And that's one of the things. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, on that note too, like symbology is also throughout the narrative of the Bible. So if you start to establish those narratives, and especially those little meta narratives in the Bible, you can it'd be like, oh, so here's a sword, and this person uses a sword, and this person uses a sword, this person uses a sword. Now, how are they using this thing? How are they acting out? Whatever, right? And so you start to develop a sense of the right ways and the wrong ways to use that. It's not a contradiction. It's just in today's popular vernacular, it's a spectrum, right? And so you have to kind of be careful. It's symbols are something that you actually, you enact them, you integrate with them, and you play them out. And that's what people don't really understand. We call personalities archetypes too. So, I mean, they're
absolutely. And just, kind of touching on the scripture thing a little bit more, and then we'll move on, is that is one of the things that we know about the ancient culture of Israel and the evolution of the language and the people, is they went from writing stories, or not writing stories, drawing stories, pictures, and drawing pictures with words orally, so that naturally translates to the writing that was developed So, it really does an injustice when we approach, ancient cultures or writings, regardless if it's the Old Testament, Israel, or this, that, and the other, without understanding that, these people were they used a lot of imagery, a lot of symbolism, and all these things, because that's, just as an oral society, they painted these uh, fantastic pictures at times. That doesn't mean all of it's that, but we have to, we got to kind of decipher and keep in our mind, you know, who we're reading, where it came from, and the evolution of it. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not inspired by God. It doesn't mean that there's not extremely important truths to draw from it, but we need to have more of a practical, rational approach. I'm not saying be so rational we have to make every single little thing make sense, but just more practical about how we approach it and understand.
Well, I'll say there's a balance between rationality and understanding, and and that's where you have this idea of becoming the individual. It sits in the middle of that. Because in order to understand, you actually have to develop a connection, and there has to be something real with people that's not necessarily related to how rational they could be. And so then you have to balance rationality, and you have to sit there and you go to the doctor's office, and that doctor has to diagnose you with let's just say, even though it may be just the common cold, right? You have to be able to rule out that it's not some crazy disease that comes from, I don't know, Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these things that have to be taken into account. And that is, hopefully, there's an idea of salience and relevance and an individual aspect to that, because we can't all be numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, and I'm glad you brought that point up. Kind of segues in to another area that I wanted to just kind of touch on a little bit. And that was, as we've talked, I said, my goal is trying to get back to the original understanding that the followers of Christ had. I want to kind of put my mind in the closest understanding to, a lot of what scripture means at the time of Christ and the church starting and all of that. And in doing so, I've learned a lot about the collectivist nature of so many societies today and throughout history. And it was kind of, pushing me away from the individualism of the West and leaning more towards this collectivist nature.
And then a great conversation.
Yeah. And then after, not just Jordan Peterson, he just happens to be the current foremost champion for individualism, and actually listening to the importance of not having everybody. And when I say collectivist cultures, I'm not talking about the collectivism that we see today, this tribalism. I'm talking about more of a sense of community. And it wasn't a forced sense of community, where everybody had to, carry all this, everybody had to have the same image or we're all this one group identity together. But I think that somewhere along the way, I'm sure you're as aware as I am about the extremist nature of human beings. We tend to go from, being a good, balanced, collectivist community society to an ultimate individualistic. And the truth is, it's somewhere in between. We need the individualism, but we also need to keep that sense of community. And you and I have talked several times about that in private, and you're far more familiar with the individualistic nature of the West. And so your thoughts on the individualism that we do promote in the West?
Well, there's a lot of things to start, I guess, unpacking there. So even when I sit here and say the meaning forging individuals, right? My ideal, or like something to that effect, is someone who can successfully navigate the, like, not only being an individual but also interacting with other people, and how they do that. So there's a lot there, and what I would sit here and say is an individual has to be able to move through the world as effectively as possible. And what's really frustrating for me is when people are pushing their views onto other people, and saying this way is the way, and that's not exactly the case at all. It's anything but that. You have to let people, in some regards, kind of forge themselves, and if you don't let them do that, and you don't let them hash out those ideas, then you run into some issues. And we still have to put left and right limits on these ideas, right? And so then comes this idea of progress, and whether or not you're like an individualistic society or a collective society, or something like that. And then everybody has different ideas of that. Thank God, though, people are acting out these different ideas, because now, right, if we do this right, they will share those ideas, and then those ideas hopefully are then read or understood, or in people, we're kind of trapped in this thing of trying ideas out and hopefully those things kind of move us forward, depending on what the goal is. And individualism versus collectivism is just one of those things that we have to be able to successfully navigate, because you want strong individuals in your collective. I want 1 + 1 = 2. I don't want 1 + 0 = 1, because no matter how many zeros you have, they will never equal 1.
Right. And sorry for the musical windows there.
You're fine, man.
This panel just it wouldn't go to the right window. I was like,
yeah, it doesn't do that very well with two people. You have to have like three people.
It doesn't like me tonight. But yeah, and that's a good point, because I think that we need to promote individualism without subscribing or ascribing to a type of, binary, black or white. We need to realize that, everybody today, we kind of look at things through the eyes of how everything's going now, this contemporary eyes. And I'm not sure how labels were in the past, but that seems to be like, you just can't get away from people wanting to label every single aspect of somebody's ideology, their political leanings, and none of us fit in that box. Some may, but it's for the most part. Go ahead.
The issue you start running into is labels are useful. Tribes are useful, right? They really are. Like, let's be honest. Like, there is a use to having a tribe. There's a use to having a tradition. The problem becomes when those two tribes go to war, right? So it's the idea of building bridges versus destroying each other. So how do I build a bridge, and how do I overcome this? But the problem here is there has to be a point where you either agree or you don't agree, and you have to know how to walk away and not continue to fight. And even then, you have to be prepared to defend yourself accordingly. So the idea here is, you want to find the groups of people that help you. You want to find a group of people who mutually have your best interest at heart, and you have to be able to sniff that out. And that's not always easy, and you're going to fail, and it's going to suck. Right. Yeah. And you need to form little collectives, because those collectives are safe havens. And if you can equal anything you want. Yeah. In today's world, yes. Since math is bad.
Well, you knew Mark was going to bring math into it, so
yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of did, because it's from The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung. But you have to be able to navigate these things, and you have to be able to have these relationships and build bridges. And building bridges between ideas. And then, of course, the bigger the society gets, the more differing viewpoints you have, the more differing things you have to act out. And that's why at the end of the day, we're all still growing up.
Right. So one part of that I wanted to kind of hone in on, but
Yeah.
for, we quite often hear today that tribalism is bad. There's too much. As a matter of fact, it's something that I say myself. However, I heard you had said that, we need some type of tribal idea. So without putting words in your mouth, what you mean is we need to have people that are alike, but and we kind of congregate together with similar things that we like, not necessarily to the point where it's us versus them or we versus they. And so that's the distinction you would make between when people talk about less tribalism versus what you were talking about.
Well, I think that's kind of the underlying idea. You don't want to have, you want to find communities of people who have your best interest at heart. You want to be able to find, you want to be able to network with them. You want to be able to form whatever those things are and those bonds, and those are important. And then you also want to understand your opposition or understand the other side or understand that whatever thing is within their framework as well. And so it gets rather difficult in that regard because of any number of things, and it's a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, because we've kind of had 2 points that seem a little bit contradictory, although they're not, would be the individualistic nature of the West versus having a little bit of, tribes, so.
Well, I mean, you can't survive without it. I mean, like, what do you think a business is, right? A business is, at the end of the day, is a tribe. A team that you're on is a tribe. Your country is a tribe. It just changes the scale, and that's all there is to it. It just changes the scale, and then you have to sit there and ask the question: how do I build a bridge to this other tribe, this other business, and can they come to play with me? And if they can't come and play with me, then I don't want to be with them. It's just like the kid at the yard who no one wants to play with because he's an asshole.
Right. And, you and I have had a couple of discussions about this next topic, and I don't want to go too far into it, but you'd actually made some very impactful statements and good arguments about it. About nationalism gets tossed around now as like cuss word. And it was something that at one time, I was proud of nationalism. And then it seemed as if, with a split, with this tribal mentality between progressives and conservatives, and I'm not going to call them liberals because a lot of these people today on the far left are not liberals, they're progressives. I'm more of a classical liberal myself. And so I kind of adopted, the talking point about nationalism being this evil, bad, terrible thing. But you'd make some good points about it, without this sense of pride of who we are, not to the point where, we're going and just, we don't care about other countries and what happens to them or what we quote unquote do to them or that because of who we are, but just having this national pride. So if you would, could you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. You ready for this? December 8th, 1941, September 12th, 2001, both highly nationalistic days. What's wrong with those?
And to be honest with you, when we were having that discussion and you talked about September 12th, I remember it so vividly. Everything that happened that day.
Yeah, I mean, what was wrong with that? What was wrong with every car in America flying an American flag, every football game having a moment of silence and having the American anthem play? What was wrong with that? What was wrong with all of that? Now, yes, is that an extreme? Yes, it is. But even every day we sit there and, we play the national anthem before football games or before our sports or something like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with those things.
Yeah.
There's it's not bad.
Yeah. And I mean, that honestly, I mean, that was one of the things that really, really stuck with me, after we had our conversation about that, because September 12th, there was no Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal or progressive or alt-right or alt-left, or we were all Americans. There was more love in this country in the short time I'd been alive, but there was more. I had never seen the gathering around, everyone embracing, and nobody cared about all the first world problems we had, because it was like almost overnight we realized how vulnerable we are. We live in this bubble. We don't realize how dangerous the rest of the world is. And it's because of people like you and Pasta Mike and anyone else that's listening or in the chats that's, current or former military. I mean, you guys, I can't tell you enough how much respect I have for people who literally give up their right to, in essence, be free. They give up a lot of freedoms for an agreed amount of time because they love this country. And to see so many people gather around, especially after, you're a history guy, you know exactly what happened to a lot of our military when they came back from Vietnam.
Yeah. It's completely flipped. It's very different, actually. Now they don't like the war, but they'll thank the soldiers.
Right. Because now they understand that, or I would like to think that a lot of them understand that it's the politicians calling the shots. When somebody signs up to serve, a lot of people will hear the name Commander in Chief and they don't really understand what that means. That is the Commander in Chief. That is the one who literally runs the military as a head. So when Congress or regimes or whatever you want to call it decide, hey, we're going to go do this, our military guys, they don't have a choice. As long as it's not something unconstitutional that they're commanding to happen, that's it. And these people, I know people personally affected by, this seems to be perpetual war, and they don't really have an opinion on it because of what they've seen, what they've experienced. To them, it's whether fair or not, it's a bunch of people sitting in offices, most of whom has never had to serve, or children or something like that hadn't to serve, who's making these decisions. So I am so glad that it has made that turn, and more people seem to understand now that, when you're over there, it's about taking care of your brother and your sister. It's about coming home. It's about making sure those that are with you, and even if you're not in the war zone, it's an entire support system, and everybody, and it's like a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and everybody hurts when something happens to them, especially when they're not able to be there, with them. So, I didn't want to go on about that, but I did want to say I am very thankful for your service, Pasta Mike's service, and anybody in the chat who's former military, current military, or listening. If I left your name out, I apologize, but we extremely grateful, for people who have given up a portion of their freedom for this country. But yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that part about the nationalism thing, because you really did. I mean, seriously, we didn't talk about this before the show. I put you on the spot with that. We just had this conversation last week, I think it was.
I think I'm having that conversation with Dan as well sometime soon on Christian nationalism as well, which is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Dan is part of, Pasta has assembled a superstar team, and that's all I'm gonna say about it because I don't have permission to talk anymore about it. But we have a Christian who's part of it named Dan, who has his own channel, and I am ashamed at the moment that I can't remember the name of it because I just met
Dear Christians Podcast.
Yes, Dear Christians Podcast, and his is so much bigger than mine. His personality is so much better than, well, it's close.
You gotta start somewhere, man.
Dan's a great guy. He's a good, humorous guy. But yeah, check his out. And you guys need to write something about it because he has the blog too. And I would love.
We're gonna have a discussion on it. I think is what we're trying to work on right now. I had a conversation with him about a week ago, so like we'll see. Yeah,
I'd like to see y'all like co-write a blog. I mean, a blog together, kind of like a, back and forth,
like a dialogue.
Yeah,
those are good.
Yeah. But you got to make it aggressive. I mean, somebody needs to be on the offensive or the affirmative, and so, no, it's I definitely looking forward to something coming from that. So, All right, those were the easy questions.
Oh man, that was the hard question.
Those were the easy questions.
Oh, never mind. Okay, what
time?
What you got? What you got?
It's time for the hard questions. What is the last song on your iPhone or Android that you played? And no lying either.
What was it? I have to look. I think the last song that I played was complete song or partial song?
Either or. Anything that'll embarrass.
I should have Call You Maybe up here, but it's not. No, but it's Too Bad. I think it was on my playthroughs.
Too Bad
by Nickelback was playing.
Oh, I used to like Nickelback, like way back when a nickel was a nickel. Do you know how they got their name?
Do I want to know?
It's actually a real simple way, like most bands do. I believe it was an arcade or a restaurant or something in Canada that they all visited all the time. And they would have to give like $1 or something like that. And they'd say, here's your Nickelback. It was like 95 cents. And dude's like, Nickelback. Yeah. So,
okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Nickelback fan, but I just remember that story from.
Well, I'm on a 2000s kick right now. And so I found a playlist from, because that's not classic rock, guys. So 2000s is now officially classic rock for all you older folks out there.
Jim. I was having this discussion with my wife the other day as Guns N' Roses was playing, and I looked on the radio and it said classic rock. And I was like, oh, no, they didn't. And then I got to thinking about it and I was like, wow, it really is classic rock. So,
classic rock now. Yeah.
Okay, Guns N' Roses is, Let's set that aside. Let's set that aside now because, and this is, this pains me to say this. It hurts every bone in my body to say that Leonard Skinner is now oldies. Think about it.
So now Leonard the 70s and 80s is now oldies?
Yeah. Leonard Skinner, 60s, 70s. It's oldies now. Yeah. Now the 80s, we can take the 80s. We had this conversation earlier in one of the chat groups. We can take the 80s and we take the book of history and eternity and you rip that whole section out and just throw it away. That was as far as style, most of the music, it was just horrid. And I'm kind of
Glam Rock during that time frame too.
Who?
You got Glam Rock during that time frame too.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like, it's so the 70s was like, we have disco. Nobody can do worse than this. And the 80s said, oh yeah, hold my beer.
Hold my hairspray.
Hold my hairspray. Hold my hair. Hey, I am not ashamed to say, only because I want to brag about the hair that I had. I had long hair when I was in
elementary. You were a mullet guy, weren't you?
No. I hated mullets. I was because I wanted to be a headbanger. So I had long straight hair all the way around halfway down my back. And when I did get into the hard 80s rock and some of the hair bands, but they came and went pretty quick as far as my taste, because how old are you, Jim?
I'm 29.
Oh my gosh, I just end this conversation now. So, Jim, just so you know, I was alive and actually remember when MTV started. And on Saturday nights, they had Headbangers Ball. And
I have a question. Was that before or after the dinosaurs? Neanderthal, maybe?
Oh, that's I still can't.
Those brows look a little thick, like it's
yeah. So normalizing atheism. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
That's my buddy Pasta, Jim's buddy Pasta, and he's done all of my editing videos, made it professional and everything. And I love him so much that I hate every bone in his body.
Oh, why is that?
Because comments like the one he just said. And he loves to remind me that, in the chat groups and stuff, that I'm the oldest guy there. And I've always been the youngest guy. And I can't, I refuse this position. I don't identify as 42.
Oh, really? Well, science says otherwise.
Yes. Yeah.
Biology says otherwise.
Yeah. So let's see. You were a baby when MTV started. I was an adult when video killed the radio star. Titan, you giving away your age here, buddy?
Titan Uranus. See, Titan, I do say it on other people's channels.
I said it last night on Normalizing Atheism, and I swore Pasta was going to drive up here today. And no, anyway.
You gotta entice them halfway. That's how you get them. You have to entice them halfway. And then say, "Hey, I'll pay for my own gas," and then he'll pay for everything else, including all the booze you can drink.
Yeah, we're trying to have a half serious conversation here, and you're ruining it. So where are my mods at? So yeah, go check out Pasta. He needs attention right now. He's at Normalizing Atheism on YouTube. His show. Actually, I was going to say mine was bigger, but he's like in 3 weeks done more subs than me. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm trying to be better than Pasta. I'm not better than Pasta in anything. I'm way shorter than him. I'm older than him. I don't have.
Wait, you've already admitted that you're shorter. So how short are we talking here?
5'7".
Yeah, he's pretty fucking tall. I've seen him in person, so I can sit there and say he's pretty tall. And then I would also sit there and say, you would be Tyrion. He's the mountain.
I just want you to know, Jim, I've had quite a few atheists on here, and you're the first one to drop the F-bomb.
I'm sorry.
Well, so now when I upload this to my podcast later, I'm going to have to put mature content on it. And it's going to get tossed over to the side where it's not featured. I appreciate that, Jim.
You can always bleep it out and just, type timestamp 103.
103. Okay. 104.59, 105, 105. Yeah.
Just timestamp it. It's okay. It's okay. Besides, there's all of this is mature content. It's like I'm talking to, Tyrion. Except you don't drink and know things. That's the problem. You just drink.
It's going to go off the rails here in a minute. That's so anyway, there were a couple more questions I had for you, but I think you may have relinquished that time. So no, what kind of music guy are you? Seriously?
I'm kind of all over the place. I would definitely, I can go from classical to rock to, I don't do hip hop. I just don't do hip hop and rap. It's very hard for me to get into.
You freaking racist.
Probably no, I'm joking. And it's because of that. Like I can't get into that.
Yeah.
I will always jam out to a good Taylor Swift song. You got to, you have to.
That's
There's
a lot
nothing. Listen, like you want to thank
That's a
people for their
lot to
service.
admit to.
Like if you want to thank people for their service, just next time you see somebody like a veteran, and just play "Call Me Maybe." Okay. And I've been a part of an entire formation of like thousands of people dancing on "Call Me Maybe" by Carly Rae Jepsen or whatever.
Oh, yeah, Carly. You know the name, Jim. Come on, bro. You got an image to uphold here, buddy. Weren't you an officer?
Exactly. It's because I'm an officer.
You out because
I don't
almost
do any work.
Everybody here is enlistees. Y'all
Well,
know what he is.
Anyway. I just sit there and laugh.
He is.
I sit there and go, "What is it you want me to do again?"
This question will determine where our relationship goes, and if there even is one.
Okay, I'll be sure to answer in the most negative way possible. That way, I can completely leave you behind.
Just pineapple go on pizza.
Fuck no, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna have to bleep that out, but yes, that's my boy. I was nervous.
I can't do pineapple on pizza. I
started talking about some Carly Rae, and I'm like, oh my God, he's a pineapple guy. He's a pineapple
guy. Listen, the atheist pizza has me nailed down. I'm a meat guy.
That's it. You don't have to reveal all that here, Jim. Okay, so this we got to cut it off before it starts rivaling Oz's appearance on here. Pasta's going to be beating me later for not being professional.
Oh, well, this wasn't professional.
But it wasn't intended to be. So. That's his stuff. He can keep his stuff professional. Wait a minute. News anchor. Jam with Meaning Forge. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Seriously, thanks, Jim. I appreciate you hanging out with us. Everybody go check out Jim over at Meaning Forge on YouTube. You go hang out in the back, and I'm going to see everybody else out. Is that cool? It don't matter if it is or not. You're going to the back. Love you, bro. Man, Jim. I love Jim. Jim always gives me all kinds of perspectives. He has his mind works. Well, first of all, a lot better than mine and a lot more clear, but it's comes from such a different angle being a philosophy guy. And he's more like a philo-psychological guy. And sometimes I think he's like, looking into my thoughts and thinking what I'm thinking. But anyway, no, he's a good guy. Check him out, Meaning Forge. Oz was in the chat with the Atheist Roundtable. Go check them out. I think they have a show coming up tonight, as a matter of fact. Oh, wait a minute. If I'm not mistaken, he can shoot me later if I'm wrong. But I think they're going to have Justin on tonight from formerly the Empathetic Atheist, who has recently converted to Islam. And if it is still tonight, or I just have my days wrong, Oz can yell at me later. But that's going to be interesting. He has made massive ripples in the community with his conversion. And yes, Jim, thank you. I will be on the Meaning Forge with Jim doing one of his shows. He just completed a season. He's a smart guy. He's going to do it in seasons. And so check out Nate Dogg, who's in the chat. He's got his own show up late with Nate. Hey, Nate, if you don't mind throwing there the days and times. I don't remember exactly when they are. I'm sorry. Pasta Mike over at Normalizing Atheism. That dude's edit game is off the rails. His interviews are off the rails. You got to check him out too. And I don't think anybody else in the chat has anything going on. And I'm glad, because I'm tired of doing shout outs. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. Again, if you missed it, we have Wednesday nights at 10 Eastern. Nate. Lady Late. Dude is funny. I don't care what Pasta says about him in the private. He's a funny guy. I actually love Nate. We kind of talk dirty to each other sometimes. I mean, talk about things sometimes behind closed doors. But so I do have Richard Carrier coming up if you missed that announcement. And I have two massive names coming up. I just if you go to Normalizing Atheism and watch, I was on there last night on Pasta's channel. Go there and watch that. We had a great interview. We talked about pro-life, pro-choice. We talked about similarities in religions, Christianity, Islam, things like that. Had a great time with him. And at the end of it, I announced two massive guests that I have that are coming. I'm not going to announce them on here until I have dates and times confirmed. So right now, they have agreed to come on. They're huge names. I will be fanboying with both of them. And so I'll have to work on my professionalism. But also, Pasta Mike is going to join me as a co-host on the show with Richard Carrier and possibly the other ones. So we're going to knock this one out of the park. You're not going to want to miss that with, my good looks and my great personality and his professionalism and so sexy voice and just professional skills. Yeah, he's just a friend, I promise. It's going to be great. Thank you everybody for joining us. Have a good evening. I'll be back Thursday night. And Thursday night I have, oh my goodness. I have booked so many people lately because I've been going crazy to get anybody and everybody on that I could. I'm sorry, I'll have to put it in the announcements. Yeah. But it's a pretty good name. I know that. I do remember that part. Everybody have a good one. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe and share if you don't mind.